Hey guys, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank. So today we are going to try another experiment with OBS. This time we're going to do a tier ranking because why not? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Disney princes and princesses as sort of a final bookend to the Disney royalty series that we did, our first actual series on this channel. And we're going to just feel free to let me know. And yeah, while you're here, if you're new to the channel, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe, and yeah, let's go. Let's go. So for our first S, Snow White. Snow White is our S tier. The reason being is that Snow White, in addition to being the first Disney princess, I think she has set a very good template, and I think it's very easy to forget how important Snow White is. Look at someone like Mirabelle in Encanto. There are lots of traits to Mirabelle that are embodied in Snow White. There's certain kindness, a certain amazing faith in people and others that I think really does carry on. Like, and this trait carries on to just about every other Disney princess, and a couple of our Disney princes to an extent. And even in non Disney princess films, I think Snow White's character has um, helped cement Disney as a brand. Like, there's really no Disney without Snow White in my mind, and I think she hasn't aged perfectly. But I think the key is that you have to point out that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is not her story. It's the story of the Seven Dwarfs meeting Snow White. Sadly, Prince Florian, is D. Like, he just is. Florian is a victim of the times, where Snow White can come into criticism because the argument can be that her character hasn't aged. Florian's character has always kind of been terrible. He's boring. He's dull. He's one note. He has two scenes in the beginning and end of the movie. You really, he's really just there for Snow White to fall in love with. When people started talking about the Disney princess line as possibly a sexist thing, they often use the idea that the princess is reward for the prince, but they sort of ignore the fact that the early princes really they were the reward for the princess, because it's not the prince's story; it's Snow White's story, or at least it's the seven dwarfs meeting Snow White. Snow White is the focal point of the story. Same thing with Cinderella and even Sleeping Beauty. Um, so he's left behind. The story was that they didn't like how he looked in the film, so a lot of his scenes were cut, also for time. Remember that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was the first animated feature film? So yeah, I can only imagine the production nightmares that possibly followed that, and the decisions that had to be made. So next is Cinderella, and Cinderella I think is another S tier. So the reason Cinderella is because she expands the Disney princess line in a way that I think really helps. So Cinderella does not want romance. I think it's a very easy idea to think she does, but what she really wants is um, a time a time when she's not just Cinderella. You know, the girl that works in the household with her evil step family. She just sort of wants. She she's in a bad situation, and her dreams are really what get her through the day. Snow White has a sort of nebulous idea of dreams and how important they are. For Cinderella, those dreams are all that get her through the day, and it's nice to see that pay off for her. Sadly, nothing ever pays off for Henry or Henri. I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced. We're not even sure if that's his real name. It should be noted that the first two princes don't, as far as I know, don't officially have names. Or at the very least, the fan base hasn't agreed on them. So I don't know. But Henri is another D. He's a victim of same way with Florian. It's just his scenes were cut for time. There were talks about there was a scene in the beginning of the film where he would be hunting deer. He would have a duet with Cinderella after the ball. You know, they'd be in like he'd be at the palace, she'd be at the house, and you know they'd have a song, really sweet. But we never get to see it. So poo poo. So next we have Aurora. So Aurora is interesting. She's not an S. Aurora's possibly our first. She's a low B. She's a low B. Aurora's problem is she is not the main character of the story, and unlike Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, she really has nothing. She really gets through on her design. Her design really carries her off well. She's possibly the best design princess of her era, possibly still one of the best designed today. Still, but the problem is the story of Sleeping Beauty is really the story of the good fairies and King Stefan versus Maleficent. It really is, and she doesn't really carry the movie as well as one would think. She's kind of unaware of everything going on in a different way than Snow White. Like Snow White finds out pretty quickly that hey, her stepmother wants her dead. Aurora really had no idea until like the last 10 minutes of the movie that oh yeah, there's a plot going on that involves you. Philip, on the other hand, gets moved up to he's an A, so he's not an S. Um, it's very easy to make him an S because compared to his contemporaries, he does so much more. That's why at one point I called him the prince that was promised because he basically does everything that his predecessors were supposed to do. Florian was supposed to fight his way out of the evil queen's castle, and that's how we got to Snow White. He was actually there when she transformed into the hag. No, Philip found out about the plan. Maleficent told him what she was going to do, and he fights his way through. He has a duet with Cinderella. He has a duet with Aurora, the same way that Henri was supposed to with Cinderella. But the problem is, he's basically the delivery boy. He does a lot that his predecessors didn't get to do, but there's still not much to him as a character to elevate him to S. Now, if he was possibly a bit more like, if this was his story, then yeah, he'd probably go to an S, but he's an A at best. So next we have our sort of not princes, Arthur. Arthur, as much as I love him, is a B. So Arthur's problem is that he is not the main character of his story. He really isn't. The Sword and the Stone is really, no matter what you tell me, it's the story of Merlin and Merlin training Arthur. Merlin trying to get Arthur to see his own self-worth. And there's something good to be said about Arthur's story, the fact that he goes through it thinking that he's not worthy of anything, that he's lucky to get to be Kay's squire. He's very aware of the reality of the world, and Merlin has to shake him out of that. That, that the only limit is what you can achieve with your mind, and there's nothing you can achieve with a decent education. But even then, one line from Arthur that always gets me is when he says, "What do you want me to be? I'm nobody." It's a great moment, and I wish more to it was that. I wish we'd seen more of a payoff to it. But no, he's outshined by Merlin and Archimedes, and actually that's it. And another one we have Tauren. So I'm going to put Tauren a step below Arthur in this case. Tauren is an alright character. The Black Cauldron is a flawed movie. It's not a terrible movie. The problem is it's trying to combine two books into one. It's combining the first two books of the Prydain Chronicles into one movie. Like the Horn King does not matter in the great scheme of the Prydain Chronicles. The Black Cauldron is important. The Cauldron Born are a super problem in Prydain, but this isn't the story for it. Tauren's story about him sort of understanding what it is to be a hero, not putting so much faith and trust in aesthetics and gimmicks, and he's sort of a parallel to the Horn King in that way, is interesting, but Tauren's own development doesn't really quite make sense, doesn't really quite work out. Like, he learns his lesson too fast in my mind, and the story doesn't do enough with itself. He's really just a step below Arthur. Elanri is sadly a D. She is. Elanri's problem is that she is not Elanri from the books. Elanri from the books is at best or at her worst, is like a weird fusion of Hermione and Ginny. She's smart, she's feisty, she's willing to fight, and this is not it. This ain't it, fam. Elanri here is sort of, she feels like she's got the script in her hand, and so she knows not much is going to happen to her. She's really just there to, sadly, be pretty and sort of be a semi-voice of reason to Tauren. That's kind of it. So next is Ariel. Ariel, if time had been on her side, she would be an S. But she isn't. She's an A. So Ariel was the first Disney princess to go out there and get what she wanted. She is like Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora. These were passive characters. The story happened to them. Ariel makes the story happen. The problem is that she comes under a lot of fire because there's a misconception that she did it all for Eric. Eric personifies what she wants, which is a new adventure, a new experience, life on the surface. And it's very easy to say, hey, she wants Eric. And the movie does a good job of sort of saying that, but I don't think that's what they want. And then, of course, I'm 16, I'm not a kid anymore. Like, she is a kid. She made a stupid decision. And, of course, the animated series didn't do her any favors because in the animated series, she's very much aware that Ursula can't be trusted. So she then decides to trust Ursula in the movie. It was just terrible. Kingdom Hearts made it even worse. Now we have Eric. Eric is honestly... I'm going to be nice and make him a B. Actually, yeah, a B. a B. Like he's a B. He's a low B to a high C. Eric's problem is he's kind of in the background of the story. He's just interesting enough to keep your attention, and he's active. He's like there's another character that he's actually has more in common with in this tier list, but Eric is just he's kind of dull. He's very much designed to be this sort of romantic character. Like he looks like he could be on a cover of a trashy romance novel, where everyone's got like where the guys have like the white shirt. It's just open up. You see their chest hair and whatnot. It's just there. Belle. So Belle. I think people think she's an S. I don't think so. I think she's an A. Like if this was my personal favorite list, I'd definitely make Belle an S. But I think objectively she's an A. And I think it's because Belle's story is kind of hard to figure out. Belle's a great character, but I don't think the story pushes her in the direction that it needs to. Even the live action movie had this problem, that I don't quite see Belle's character getting pushed the way I think it needs to. There was a scene in the live action movie where they should have, where it's someone challenges her on her taste in books, but that's sort of irrelevant. Belle is great because she's an individual. I think what I'm really saying is Belle's movie. Actually, you know what? We're moving Belle to S. I'm sorry. The argument I made just felt kind of weak. What makes Belle great is that her story just happens to end up in romance in the same way that Cinderella does. The difference is that Cinderella is not in a terrible situation. Actually, I think that does sort of knock Belle down to B. No, it's an S. It's an S. What makes Belle work is that Belle almost straddles the line to Mary Sue in some ways. The live action one I think did. This one doesn't. So I think that's why. Like animated Belle is an S. Anything else is like live action Belle it might be the first F I actually give. But we're not doing that. Next is the Beast. The Beast is an S. I'm sorry, he is. He's a really great character. He is the first prince to go through a character arc, which none of these other ones do. Like Florian, Henry, Philip, Eric, Arthur and Tauren. Well, Arthur and Tauren attempt a character arc, but they do it badly. Beast does. He's a very tragic character in that way, and his story really does sort of move it up. Actually, I think that is what moves Belle down to an A. Because Belle's problem is, I know we're going right back to Belle, I'm sorry. Because Belle is pretty much the same person throughout the entire story, and that can be interesting. But for sort of this kind of story, I'd have to. It's too big of a deal. It's too big of a deal. Sorry. Beast goes to an S, Belle to an A. Because the movie does more with Beast in his development than it does with Belle. And I think there's probably a better story there. Like the sequels don't do Belle any favors. They don't hurt her story, but they don't make it better. It doesn't help Beast either. But Beast is just that good a character, a good tragic character. Like whenever he does something bad, like something negative, he usually realizes it before anyone else does. Like, oh, I've done it again, and it's just sort of fun. So next is Aladdin. So Aladdin is honestly, he's between an A and a B, honestly. Because Aladdin's problem primarily is that he takes second fiddle to a movie he's the title character of. Like, the genie just steals the show, the genie communicates the theme in a better, more personal way, but there is something to be said about Aladdin as a sort of Jay Gatsby-esque character, because, like Gatsby, Aladdin could have done anything with those three wishes, and he decides to focus on Jasmine, and that sort of ruins whatever plans he could have had. But what I like about Aladdin is that he really doesn't like himself, which is sort of a theme in Aladdin. A lot of the characters, it's not that they don't like themselves, they don't like how they're perceived, and they want to be viewed as more. They want to be seen for more than just what they look like or some sort of arbitrary title. And I think that moves Aladdin to an A, honestly. Jasmine's a B. She's actually the first princess to want to not be a princess. Ariel just wants to go off somewhere. She just happens to marry a prince. So she's still in that royal life. But Jasmine is the first princess to actually have to deal with being a princess. Like Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora, Alonwe. Being a princess is kind of a title to them. Even Ariel. Ariel is 16th in line for the throne, technically. Like, it would take a legit famine, an epidemic, like a horrible plague, to move Ariel up to next in line. Jasmine is the princess. Even expanded materials sort of understand that in the event that the Sultan passes, or when the Sultan passes, Aladdin will not be Sultan in the same way that the Sultan is Sultan. He'll be the first. He'll be the first man of whatever you want to call this government. Jasmine will be the Sultana, as it was called in the animated series, and the animated series did help her out. But the problem is, it's still sort of very much Aladdin and the genie show. And then Iago comes in. It's like, no, Jasmine. There's not much Jasmine can do, but Jasmine's still a great character. She and Erica are similar because they both want to marry for love. They've got a lot of great options, but they want something personal. They want someone they can connect with, and that's great. Pocahontas. Oh, you guys are gonna hate me. Pocahontas is a D. Actually, no, she's not a D. That is not fair. Pocahontas is a C, but that C comes primarily from how great her design is. The story of Pocahontas was a story that Clemens and Musker should not have handled the way they did. Nothing about that story, in my opinion, is that interesting nor worth it. John Smith is actually, for the John Smith they want, this is kind of alright. But the problem is, this is an actual historical event. Well, not an event, but these are actual characters in history. And this story is a bit uncomfortable. Also, the movie itself is kind of bland. But I don't think John Smith is interesting enough to have to stand up with the likes of Tauren. So we're moving him down to a D. Sorry, Henri. Sorry, Florian. You gotta hang around this guy. I'm not even mad as a colonel. I'm just sad he's boring as hell. Mulan. Mulan is the last S-rank princess of the Renaissance era. Actually, she's the only S-rank princess of the Renaissance era. Mulan has aged brilliantly over the years. She was a breakout character in my mind, and I think I said it. She is a Disney princess with a Disney prince approach. So I want you to look at Arthur, Tauren, Aladdin, the Beast. These are characters who really go through life thinking they aren't good enough. Or there's like society sort of tells them that they're in the wrong. Beast is definitely in the wrong for what he did, but whatever, he's like a kid, who cares? But for the most part, Disney princesses are often framed as being in the right. So Snow White is in the right. Granted, there's an old woman that wants her dead because someone said she's more pretty than her. Cinderella's in an abusive household. Aurora believes in something true love. Ariel, Belle, Jasmine, these three characters are always framed as being in the right. The world does not have to, they don't have to change, the world has to change. But we look at Aladdin, Beast, Tauren, Arthur. The movies sort of frame that they have to change. They have to become better people. Mulan isn't a bad person, but she has to understand her own worth. She has to like what she sees in the mirror. And that is something the Beast has to do, something Aladdin has to do. Arthur and Tauren excel at that. And it's really great because of that. Mulan was really the first Disney princess to really be profoundly sad and feel utterly helpless and decide to do something about it. And Shang's problem. Shang is, I did not know he was a bisexual icon. More power to the bisexual community. But I'm going to rank him, he's a B, honestly. Like, the problem is, he has the same problem that Jasmine has, in the fact this is not his story. And he really has his own sort of, but he is the first character in this story to have their own thing going on. Like, Shang really is not trying to hook up with Mulan or Ping. He may be attracted, unattracted, or just friendly with Ping. But he's not really there to make friends. Like, he's there to sort of uphold his father's honor. And that is something that unites her and him and Mulan. Why is it this moving? Why is this moving? We're keeping this in, by the way. I'm not editing this out. There we go. So next is Hercules, Herc the Jerk. So Hercules is interesting because, oh, look at this. Okay, so let's move Herc. Is Herc a B? Herc a B. Hercules, I'm gonna say I'm gonna put him as an A. Like, he was like, so with the exception of Aladdin, he's the first Disney prince, prince-ish, to really carry his own movie. Aladdin he just gets outshined by the Beast and by the genie. The Beast he shares the title with Mulan, with Belle. Good Lord, I don't know anybody's name today. The Sword and the Stone. It's not Arthur's movie. The Black Cauldron is lost to time. Only a couple people really like it. But Hercules was the first since Aladdin. and his story is fun. The sort of Rocky Hercules story, I think, Rocky Superman story, I think was great. Megara, Meg, Meg could only work as a secondary character. She really couldn't carry the story, but I always said that Megara would definitely have like a radio show or a podcast these days, and I'm gonna put her as an A because she works very well with Hercules. This sort of cynicism versus Hercules' amazing optimism is very Lois and Clark in that way. And she's also just an amazing character. Like she's one of those characters that's aged brilliantly over the years. Mulan, Meg. There's not much you can say bad about them. So Esmeralda. Esmeralda's here because I wanted to pad out the Disney royalty line. I'm not gonna lie. We're gonna put her as a C, and we're gonna put Phoebus as an honest. Phoebus is a C too. Phoebus' problem is he really shouldn't be here. Quasimodo should be, but it just sort of felt weird to have the prince be someone who doesn't get the girl when the character we could confirm as a princess does hook up with somebody, which is weird. Esmeralda and Phoebus tell a really great story for the time period. Like Phoebus is a soldier who wants to do the right thing and is sort of in a position where he's not doing the right thing. Esmeralda is on the other side, calling out the corruption and whatnot, demanding justice, and it's fun in its own way. So Nani and Lilo. So Nani and Lilo, I will down the hill that they're Disney princesses. I think they deserve the mantle about as well as anyone else. But this era was unique because we sort of left the whole fantastical route of fantasy and went to straight science fiction. But there's also something else about the story is that this is a story of two girls who lost their parents and are just trying to get through the day together. And through a pet they're able to do it. So I almost want to move them up to S. I really do, but instead I'm going to move them up to an A because the problem is Nani and Lilo get outshined a bit by Stitch. Their story is great. Their story is tender. It's beautiful. But Stitch also has tender, interesting moments that you can't quite. Whoa! Even the computer. Okay, you know what? Fine. The computer made them S. We're just gonna have them be S. I'm bad at this. Milo, Thatch from Atlantis Lost Empire. We're sort of missing the order, aren't we? I'm gonna make Milo a B. So Milo Thatch is a fun character. Michael J. Fox does a great job. But the problem is Milo is just he's fun, but Atlantis Lost Empire really needs a bit more to the story. I would like to see Milo play off of Rourke more, and even more off of Kita. Kita is honestly, she's a C. She's a C. Like I think some people might say she's a B. She's not an A or an S. Kita's problem is not really in her character. It's just sort of how the story tells it. Like Kita is really more remembered for I think how she looks and how the story ends. Not that she's like a sexualized character. I mean, well, by default, look. Have you any of you seen Kita? That's not what I'm saying. It's like Kita's design is great. Atlantis Lost Empire is more of a cult classic. Kita doesn't have a lot of great dialogue that people remember her for. People remember some dialogue from Snow White, Mulan, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Little Mermaid. I don't really think people really remember a lot from Atlantis Lost Empire in terms of dialogue. Jim Hawkins from Treasure Planet. Jim is honestly an A. So Jim and Milo tell us a somewhat similar story, but I think Jim does it better because the story. No, it was fun with Nani and Lilo. It's not fun here. Jim is fun because he's a character. The movie keeps the focus on him. Atlantis Lost Empire sort of falls off because as soon as we get to Atlantis, the story decides to speed itself up, and what more time we should have spent on Atlantis, we spend more on Milo and Kita exploring Atlantis and the problem of Atlantis, which is never really explored in any way except for Leonard Nimoy revealing this is all my fault technically. Next is Merida. So Merida is interesting. Merida was the first Disney princess to not get married at all. So we sort of have an understanding of Mulan 2 happened, so we know that, Mulan married Shang. Sequels count, don't count, it all depends. We know Aladdin and Jasmine got married. We know Belle and the Beast got married. Milo and Kita, we kind of know they got married. Pocahontas and John Smith, we're not going to talk about that. But Merida was the first one to be offered a marriage proposal. Well, actually, it was expected of her to marry, and she didn't. And it was interesting that they went that route because Merida was the first Disney princess to actually have to deal with being a Disney princess, or just being a princess in general. Like, it's expected that they will marry. And instead of, like, I don't want to be a princess, she doesn't want the responsibilities and perks, but we saw a lot of that. I'm going to give Merida a B because as great as that is, as great as her character is, the story I don't think does her the right justice. I don't know. I think it would have been better had, as much as I love her dad, I think it would be better if her dad had died. And it made a bit more of like her relationship with her mother is more strained because of that. So next we have Tiana. So Tiana is, she's a high A, low S. I'm gonna go with. I'm comfortable with that. Tiana was the first Disney princess to have a job that just sort of ended up with her getting married. Like her goal is actually similar to Cinderella's. So the one thing that separates the two of them is that Cinderella's story of being in that sort of horrible household and her dream is all that's really keeping her from falling apart is more interesting than the dream that Tiana has, which is really just to honor her dad, which is of course great, which is something she has in common with Mulan. You're seeing these connections here. Tiana just doesn't quite hit that next level for me, or at least I don't think she does. Like she's super important. She's not the first Disney princess of color. Mulan technically had, actually no, Pocahontas has that. Then Mulan, then Esmeralda, then Lilo and Nani. Like she's a great character. She's a great inspiration for little girls and little kids, little boys in general. But I think a sequel would have done her a bit more justice. But she's still a great character. Oddly enough, I'm putting Naveen in the S category. So what makes Naveen great is really the scene when he's a frog, and he admits that he doesn't know how to do anything. Like that's a very hard thing for anyone to admit, that they kind of suck. All right, few people can do that. He breaks down what it means to be a prince. Like you got all these people doing things for you. At some point, you realize you don't know how to do anything. Naveen is willing to change everything about himself. He's willing to get a job, work 2 jobs. He probably wouldn't last. He's willing to stay a frog. He's willing to marry someone he doesn't love for Tiana. He's really, I think, the first prince since the Beast willing to sacrifice everything for the person they love. It's a really great thing about that. Now we come to Rapunzel. So where does Rapunzel stand here? So Rapunzel, I'm going to say, is she's she's an A. If you were to ask me, I think she carries Snow White's legacy the best. She is a character that is marked by optimism and love and faith in people. She brings out the best. I'm going to move her up to S because of that, because she has a profound effect on the world around her that Tiana does too, actually. But Tiana really only has it with Naveen, and we see Rapunzel have this effect on just about everyone she meets that isn't Mother Gothel. So there's that. Flynn, Eugene, Flugene. That's a fun little Easter egg for the people that have been watching us for a while. I'm going to make him a B. I think he stands out. I think he's a good B character. The reason being is that Flynn's character is entirely inherent on his reactions to Rapunzel, which works for the Beast, but not so much with Flynn to move him up there. I think a big problem with Flynn for me is, or I think just in general, is not even like the age or the cynicism. I think those are his strengths. Those would elevate him to a B. I think the problem is he's lacking other stuff to move him up to an A and an S. And I think just because the movie really is about the two of them, and we saw plenty with Rapunzel, he's got this sort of shallow idea that I think about, he just wants an island and all this sort of fun stuff. I think we should have had more time expanding on that more to really help flesh him out. So, now we come to the bane of my existence, Frozen. So Elsa, I'm going to say it. She's an F. No, she's not. I said there was no F. She's not even really a D. I'm going to give Elsa points for how she's set up. this person who was really motivated by events of her past and her growing powers. I think those are all great. The problem is how the movie handles Frozen is and Elsa's powers. I think are the problem. There's a sort of fake idea of control, which if the movie wants to do that, it does a bad job of it. I called it, what was it? I think I called it the Frozen factor or Frozen syndrome, where because the movie can be about so many things that it's really not about anything. Elsa's powers can be about her anxiety, about her powers, her budding sexuality, her just about anything. And no, I just can't. I just can't. Anna is, I think, in the same category. I really hate to do it that way too because it really does sound like I just hate this movie. But to be clear, I liked Anna. I think for the most part, Anna was one of my favorite characters in Frozen. I don't really like much about Frozen, but whatever. Bear with me on this, and I'll move her up to a B because I think Anna's problem is the movie puts gloves on her more than it does Elsa, because a big problem Anna has is that she never because by erasing her memory, Anna is absolved of any responsibility of that night, and that's a problem. I think the best thing that would have happened is if at some point Anna got her memory back, and she remembered that night, and she realized that in a way it is her fault, and I think that would have done her and Elsa's relationship a good service. But no, no, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Why is this still stuck here? No. Remember, we're not editing any of this out. No, no, no. We'll just keep going. So next is Kristoff. My boy Kristoff is oddly enough, he is an A. We're just waiting for the computer to catch up to us because I do not know how to wait. Do. So let's talk about Kristoff while we're waiting for the computer to catch up. So Kristoff as a character he's the most standout character in Frozen in my mind. He's less over the top than Olaf, which always feels like he's designed to sell toys and merchandise, which is fine. I'm sure Disney needs the money now more than ever. Needed it then too. But with Kristoff, what works for him is his cynicism, which plays off a bit better with Anna than it does with Flynn and Rapunzel, because Flynn and Rapunzel's relationship is designed to sort of be that Flynn is the one in the wrong, Rapunzel is the one in the right, and that's fine in itself, but we're not doing anything else with it. Like, what does Rapunzel really learn? Rapunzel, again, is sort of a callback to that era where, the princess is right, the rest of the world needs to catch up, which is fine in a sense, but I don't know. It just doesn't do it for me. With Kristoff and Anna, though, they have a back and forth. Kristoff doesn't believe in true love. His dynamic with Anna over the marriage of Prince Hans is, I think, great because of that. Oh, this is working my nerves, ain't it? Ain't it? And their back and forth works because at some point you feel that he does have an effect on her, she has an effect on him, and I think that works. And of course, there's the sequel with Frozen 2, where Kristoff, I think, to my knowledge, has the first Disney love song sung entirely by a guy. And the Lost in the Woods is great. It was the best part of Frozen 2. I don't care what anyone says. It was great. It was fun. It was dynamic. Oh, I just, I bought it on my phone. I got it on my phone as I was listening to it in the theater. I was like, I gotta get this song. I gotta get this song. So, yeah, there's that. Oh my God. This is hilarious. Oh. So yeah. So let's go there. We're gonna see if we can refresh this. Oh, there we are. There we are. Look at that. Look at that. I think we got caught up. Oh nope, it's reloading. It's reloading. It's reloading. Again, we're not editing any of this. We're living with this decision. Okay, we're in. We're in. So Kristoff. We said, oh, come on. Kristoff is an A. Move him to an A. Move the man to an A. And finally, we have, well, at some point, we will have, we will have let's talk about Kristoff some more. So, Kristoff, actually, there's not much to say about Kristoff, but actually, no, there is something. Kristoff's cynicism is both appropriate for Anna's amazing optimism, but also for the comedy of it. Like, he plays off, like, Kristoff and Flynn sort of aware that they're in a movie, or like they're in this sort of weird fantasy story, and they don't quite belong. They're like, no, you don't marry someone you just met. Why is everyone breaking in the song? But it works for both of them because it sort of helps melt away the sort of ice in their heart, the sort of cynicism. Anna and Rapunzel make Flynn and Kristoff believers again in impossible things, and it's great. And I think it works better for Kristoff because he's already set up to be grouchy. Even his rock troll family points out, yeah, he's kind of a negative Nancy. He's kind of a negative Nancy. He does that, and yeah. So finally, we have Moana. We're screw it. We're just gonna go to Moana now. So Moana is she's an A. She's an A. So what stops her from being an S is the fact that I really don't think Moana's story challenges her enough. Like, she has this great story. She's the second princess to sort of, reject the idea. Actually, she doesn't reject the idea of being married. So this is something that both Frozen, both Anna and Elsa get, like, praised for. Like, they didn't pick anyone. Well, Elsa was never given a chance to pick anyone. She was never pressured to pick anyone, so it's kind of a moot point. Anna picks someone herself. Like, there's no expectations of Anna and Elsa to get married to anyone. It's expected they should. For the sake of political alliances, they would get married. So, no. Merida is the only princess, along with Jasmine, who are expected to be married. Naveen needs to get married to keep the cash flow going, because his parents cut him off. That's really it. Pocahontas was expected to marry Kocoum. So there's that. That's pretty much it. Henry too. Actually, it seems like more than Eric. So Henry, Eric, Naveen are really the only ones that actually have to get married. Jasmine, Pocahontas, and Merida. It's pretty even on who has to get married. Like, Moana isn't given the option of getting married because it's not the important thing. Moana's entire story is about her trying to be a good leader for the people of Motunui. And that's great, that's fun. My problem is sort of really the scene when she's given the option to quit. I think that's sort of a cop-out because Mulan didn't really get the option to quit. She saw that there was still trouble, and she went to it. Like, so what happens if Moana goes home? Her family still starves. So it's like a weird point. And, like, the movie sort of plays off like as a myth, which is fine, but it also makes it kind of dull at the same time. But, so I'm putting Moana as an A. So, that is it. That is everyone. So, our S tier, Snow White, Cinderella, Beast, Mulan, Nani and Lilo, Naveen, and Rapunzel. Our A tier, oh, look at that, reloading. Loading. Ba 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 ba. I still have to watch those 2 episodes of Doctor Who. Like, I'm so far behind on Doctor Who. So that was our tier list. Let's see if this comes back up. You know what? I don't think it's gonna happen. But yeah, you wouldn't believe how many times I've had to record this. It's kind of frustrating. So anyway, let's just call this here. Anyway, so that was my tier list. If you're new to the Bucket Think Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. Check out some other videos, and I'll catch you all later. This is Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well. Should I have not done that? I think I should.